My brother mocked my cheap little apartment. "You're still poor and pathetic?" he texted. I replied with a photo of my new house, and now he wants to reconnect. It started with another text, just a short string of words on a glowing screen, but the weight of them landed like a punch. "You're still poor and pathetic?" No greeting. No question mark at the end, even. Just a smirking assumption. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the sting of it. Not like before. Not like all those years when words like that could fold me in half. My older brother Caleb had a gift. Not for kindness or empathy, but for being everything my parents had ever wanted. Varsity athlete, straight-A student, full scholarship to Dartmouth, job at a Fortune 500 company by 23. He wore success like a tailored suit. And me? I was the late bloomer. He'll find his way eventually kid. The one who dropped out of college after 2 semesters because I couldn't afford it and didn't see the point of pretending anymore. I still remember that apartment. The one Caleb loved to mock. It was 1 bedroom, with a warped linoleum floor that peeled at the edges, and pipes that groaned like haunted ghosts in the winter. The kind of place where you didn't take your socks off and hoped the neighbors kept their arguments down to a dull roar. But it was mine. The first place I paid for entirely on my own, working night shifts as a delivery driver and weekends fixing up old laptops people gave up on. Caleb came by once, years ago, on a holiday visit. Took one look around and said, "You seriously live here? God, this is tragic." He laughed. I didn't. Our relationship was never close. But after that day, it drifted into something colder. He'd send me the occasional message, always unprompted, always cruel in that passive-aggressive way that barely masked the disdain underneath. "Still chasing dreams? Bet you're living the minimalist lifestyle, you know, by force. Some of us grew up." I never responded. Never gave him the satisfaction of knowing how deep those cuts ran. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that behind the cracked walls of that apartment, something had begun to take root. A spark. A plan. Because while he was busy climbing the corporate ladder, I was grinding in silence. Teaching myself to code. Getting certified in every system I could afford to study. Freelancing. Failing. Trying again. Building small websites. Fixing back-end issues for startups. Eventually, I found my niche, tech consulting for medium-sized businesses that couldn't afford full-time IT departments but needed high-level problem solving. And then one contract changed everything. But I'll get to that. Because first, I need to tell you about the moment that text came through. That awful little message from Caleb, punctuating years of mockery with another jab. I didn't write back. Not with words, anyway. I stood up from the Italian leather stool in my new kitchen, yes, my kitchen, with the wide quartz countertops and the hidden smart fridge. I walked past the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the landscaped backyard, the one with the stone fire pit I had custom built. And I snapped a photo. No caption. Just the shot. Then I hit send. And waited. The next morning, Caleb texted again. "Hey, we should catch up. Reconnect sometime. Been too long." Too long? Now that was funny. But not quite as funny as what was coming next. I didn't reply right away. I let that text from Caleb sit for a full day. Just hovered there, unread. And I imagined him staring at his phone, that same smug smile slipping slowly into confusion. Then into frustration. Then, finally, into something like curiosity. What could possibly have changed? What did that house mean? I'd spent most of my life on the receiving end of his success. Caleb never said it outright, but every conversation was a performance. He was the headliner, and I was the footnote. At family dinners, he'd talk about bonuses and bonuses on top of bonuses, about company cars and promotions, about how exhausting leadership was when no one else could quite keep up. I'd just nod, spooning mashed potatoes like they were the only thing in the world that needed my attention. But what he didn't realize was that while he was talking, I was listening. And watching. I noticed how our parents leaned in when he spoke and barely looked up when I entered the room. How even when I offered small victories, A new client, a good month, it was met with. That's nice, but Caleb just closed a 7-figure deal. That silence they gave me? I used it. I turned it into fuel. And now here we were. 2 nights after his "Let's reconnect" text, I finally answered. One line. Sure. You should come by this weekend. He showed up wearing a designer jacket and the same old superiority, like a cologne he didn't realize smelled cheap. I met him at the door. No handshake. No awkward hug. Just a simple nod and a "Come in." He stepped through the entryway and froze. That was the first crack in the echo chamber he'd lived in his whole life. The high ceilings. The open layout. The soft piano jazz playing from the smart speaker that adjusted its volume depending on where we stood. The art on the walls, real art, not the faux modern prints he used to mock me for liking. And the scent, nothing artificial. Just wood, warmth, and something faintly citrus from the hidden essential oil diffuser my girlfriend insisted we get. Whoa, Caleb muttered, walking slowly into the living room like he'd stepped onto a film set. This is yours? All of it, I said. He ran his hand along the edge of the kitchen island, looked up at the hanging lights like they might be an illusion. You, did good. I just smiled. Wine? I poured him a glass of a vintage he didn't recognize but pretended to, and we sat. My girlfriend, Lila, came downstairs at just the right time. She always had a sense for drama. Elegant, confident, sharp-witted. She greeted him with a handshake, introduced herself with effortless charm, and then excused herself to take a call from a client in Paris. He looked at me, eyebrows raised. She's impressive. She is. He took a long sip of wine, like maybe it would wash away the realization sinking into his chest. I watched him closely, the way his eyes darted from the furniture to the fixtures, the subtle touches that screamed money, but not in the loud, desperate way he was used to. No price tags. No bragging. Just presence. And he couldn't handle it. I could tell. He didn't know how I'd done it. He wanted to ask. He wanted to understand. Because for the first time in his life, he was on unfamiliar ground, my ground. And I wasn't going to hand him a map. I didn't offer a tour, not at first. I wanted him to sit in it for a while. To stew in the not knowing. That quiet unease he tried to disguise with half smiles and questions he couldn't quite form. So, he finally said, how'd you land all this? I shrugged. Consulting. Tech stuff. Nothing flashy. It was a lie by omission, and I meant it to be. I wasn't going to hand him a neat little story he could summarize at the next family gathering. Yeah, he got lucky with some startup or whatever. No. Let him fill in the blanks. Let him wonder how the guy he used to call pathetic had built something this clean, this sharp, this quiet and powerful. After another awkward silence, I said, You want to see the rest? His relief was almost comical. Yeah, definitely. So I showed him. The guest room first, because I wanted him to know he wasn't staying. Then the office, sleek and minimal, where I casually mentioned a few Fortune 100 clients. I didn't say who, just enough to let the logos dance behind his eyes. We passed the home gym. He did a double take. You work out? Started a few years back. Helps clear the head. The real sting came when we got to the backyard. French doors opened onto a flagstone patio, complete with a stone fire pit, wraparound seating, and a built-in grill that probably cost more than his car's last upgrade. Whoa, he muttered again. I was collecting those. Each one a soft confession. You like bourbon? I asked as we stepped outside. He nodded, still wide-eyed. I poured us 2 glasses of Blanton's neat. Handed him one. The silence settled in heavy this time, like the gravity had changed. He wasn't sure how to carry himself anymore. So is this like a recent thing? He asked. Or have you been doing well for a while? I looked at him, long and even. Let's just say, it's been building. Quietly. He nodded, slowly. Then something flickered in his eyes. Guilt? Envy? Maybe both. I didn't press. I didn't need to. Because every polished corner of that house, every detail he saw, was saying the thing I wouldn't. I made it. Without you. In spite of you. He just didn't know what was coming next. We sat out back, sipping bourbon under the soft wash of golden string lights. It should have been peaceful. In any other life, with any other history, maybe it would have been. But Caleb was fidgeting. He kept glancing around, eyes landing on details he didn't want to acknowledge: the sunken hot tub, the subtle hum of hidden speakers playing jazz, the small glass sculpture near the garden that I knew he would mistake for just decoration, but had cost more than his monthly rent back in college. "It's impressive," he said finally. "I mean, really." I let the compliment hang in the air without responding. I wasn't going to make this easy. Not for him. He tried again. "So, is this the life now? Fancy house, perfect girlfriend, expensive whiskey?" I turned toward him, slow and measured. "It's not perfect. Just mine." He nodded, then laughed softly. "Man, remember that apartment you had? What was it, 8 years ago? That place with the, what was it, duct tape on the window?" Ah. There it was. He couldn't help himself. "Yeah," I said. "You called it poverty chic." Sent me a care package with a single light bulb and a note that said, "For your dark little cave." He chuckled, like it was still funny. "I was just messing with you." "No," I said, voice low. "You weren't." He looked up, the smile faltering. I took another sip of bourbon and leaned back. "You weren't messing with me when you said I'd never make it. Or when you told Mom I was the family embarrassment. Or when you texted me, unprompted, out of nowhere, still poor and pathetic?" He swallowed. The air shifted. "I don't remember saying that," he muttered. I raised an eyebrow. "You do." We locked eyes for a long moment. "I'm not mad," I added. "Not anymore." That seemed to surprise him. "But let's be clear, I didn't build all this because of you. I built it in spite of you." His jaw tightened. He nodded once, sharply, like he'd just been hit, and wasn't sure how to respond. I stood up. "Come on. I'll show you the upstairs." I didn't have to look over my shoulder to know Caleb was following. His footsteps were slower now, deliberate, like he was walking through a museum he didn't understand. The upstairs hallway was lined with framed photos. Not of family. Not of childhood birthdays or graduations or Christmas mornings with matching pajamas. I never had those. Not really. Instead, the walls held moments I chose: a photo of me on the summit of Mount Hood, wind tearing through my jacket and a grin cracking my sunburned face. A candid of Lila laughing with her hand over her mouth, sunlight flaring behind her. And one shot of my old apartment, yes, the poverty chic one, but taken from a clever angle, the warm glow of a desk lamp spilling over a tangle of notebooks and computer parts. The caption below read, "Start here." Caleb paused there. "You framed this?" I turned. "Yeah." He blinked. "Why?" "Because it mattered." He didn't have a response. Just kept staring at it like it was a relic from a world he thought had burned down. We passed the guest bath. I let him glance at the marble counters, the rainfall shower, then into the master suite. Vaulted ceilings. A balcony overlooking the backyard. The walk-in closet Lila and I shared was bigger than the bedroom we used to rent together. He exhaled, low and long. "This is wild. I didn't think." "I know," I interrupted, not unkindly. "You didn't think I'd ever be anything." His eyes snapped to mine. "That's not fair. Isn't it?" He started to say something. Then stopped. This was the part he hadn't prepared for. He expected a tour, maybe some thinly veiled bragging, and a quiet reunion over drinks. He didn't expect to be held accountable. He didn't expect the past to have followed him up the stairs. But I had carried it. Every insult. Every offhand jab. Every time he smirked while I struggled. I didn't let it break me. I built around it. And now here he was, standing in the middle of everything he once said I'd never have. And we still hadn't even gotten to the real confrontation. That came next. We walked back downstairs, slower this time. He didn't speak, and I didn't fill the silence. I wanted him to feel it, not out of cruelty, but because some truths only land when there's space to hear them echo. When we reached the living room, he gestured toward the couch, but I stayed standing. He got the message and stayed on his feet too. I get it, he said, voice measured, like he was stepping carefully across broken glass. I said some stuff. Dumb stuff. But I didn't mean for it to get to you. I let out a breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. Caleb, you meant all of it. That's the thing. You didn't just say it once or in passing. You kept saying it. You enjoyed saying it. He opened his mouth to protest, but I raised my hand. No. Let me. He shut it. For years you made me feel small. Not because I was lazy or aimless or unkind, but because I didn't measure up to whatever metric you and Mom and Dad built your worth around. Grades. Prestige. Appearances. I took a slow step forward. You'd send those texts out of nowhere, like little reminders that I wasn't enough. Like you needed to keep me in my place. Still poor? Still pathetic? You remember those? He flinched. That was new. I never replied. I continued. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew anything I said would be dismissed, twisted, or turned into another punchline. I pointed around the room. This? I said, voice low. None of this was to impress you. I didn't build this house for revenge. I didn't get a successful career so you'd come calling. I did it because I had to. Because nobody was coming to save me. Least of all you. He nodded slowly, eyes on the floor. And now, I added, you want to reconnect? Because for the first time, you're the one looking up. You're not reaching out to mend anything. You're reaching out because the narrative you've lived in is finally cracking. And now you're not sure of who you are without being the successful one. He looked up, eyes wet but proud. That's not. Don't, I said. Please. Don't lie. Not here. We stood there for a long time. Just breathing. Then I said softly but clearly, I forgive myself for ever needing your approval. But I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He swallowed hard. So what now? I walked over to the front door. Opened it. What now? I echoed. Now you go home. And sit with this. Like I sat with your words for years. He didn't argue. Didn't fight it. He just walked past me, stepped onto the porch, and turned one last time like he might still find the brother he remembered. But I wasn't there anymore. I closed the door. The door clicked shut behind him, and for the first time in years, I felt taller. Not because I had won anything, this wasn't a victory, not really, but because I had finally stepped out of the corner he had pushed me into my whole life. And stayed out? I stood in the hallway for a minute, listening. No movement. No voice on the other side. Just stillness. Then I walked back to the kitchen, poured the last inch of bourbon into my glass, and stood at the window, watching his car pull out of the driveway. He didn't speed away. He just sat there for a while, engine idling, staring straight ahead. I wondered what was going through his head. Regret? Anger? Shame? Maybe nothing. Maybe, for the first time, Caleb didn't know how to feel. He drove off eventually. No wave. No final look back. And I was fine with that. That night I didn't sleep much. Not because I was bothered, but because something had shifted. Like a heavy door had finally unlatched inside me, and now all the air was moving differently. I kept thinking back to that first apartment, the peeling linoleum, the rust-stained sink, the view of the alleyway. I remembered sitting on the mattress on the floor, scrolling through job boards at 2 a.m., eating ramen with a screwdriver as a spoon because the real ones were still in a box I couldn't afford to unpack yet. And yet even then, I knew I'd build something. Not to prove anyone wrong, but to finally prove myself right. What Caleb never understood, what maybe he still doesn't, is that I never wanted what he had. The titles, the suits, the boardrooms filled with glassy-eyed egos. That wasn't my mountain. I just wanted peace. Autonomy. A life I could wake up in and say, "This is mine." He wanted me to chase his shadow. I chose to build my own light. 2 days passed. I didn't hear from Caleb, no calls, no texts. Not even one of his signature passive-aggressive jabs disguised as checking in. And honestly, that was a gift. But on the third day, I got a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. This time, she left a message. Her voice was oddly soft. "I heard Caleb visited you. He didn't say much, but he seemed different. Quiet. Anyway, I just wanted to say I hope you two had a good talk. We should all get together soon. As a family." I listened to it once. Then again. And I realized she had no idea what really happened. Caleb hadn't told her. Not about the house. Not about the bourbon. Not about the words he used to slice me down for years. Or the words I finally gave back. He'd left it all out. That, more than anything, told me everything I needed to know. For once, he wasn't spinning the story. He was just sitting with it. Good. Let him. A week later, the next message came. This time from Caleb again. Simple. Measured. Almost careful. "Hey. Been thinking a lot. About everything. You were right. Would still like to catch up sometime. If that's okay." It would have hit differently a year ago. Maybe even a few months back. But now? I just stared at the screen, thumb resting on reply, and didn't tap it. Instead, I looked around my house, my home. The space I built from the ground up, with no shortcuts, no favors. The sun spilling across the hardwood floors. The sound of Lila upstairs, laughing into a headset during a client call. The quiet hum of a life that finally felt mine. I wasn't angry anymore. But I also wasn't eager. I didn't need an apology dressed in vague phrasing. I didn't need him to catch up. What I needed, what I chose, was peace. And you can't invite someone into your peace if they've only just started to hear their own noise. So I set the phone down. Didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It's strange how silence can feel like closure. I never answered that last message. Not to be cruel, just to be clear. Clear about where I stood. Clear about the boundaries I'd built with the same hands I once used to carry his approval like it meant everything. I didn't need a reunion. I didn't need redemption. And I definitely didn't need to be anyone's little brother anymore. Some people outgrow their homes. Some outgrow the people who made them feel small. Me? I outgrew him. And that was enough.